Psychology selection, it is conducted mainly by psychologists. And beside being psychologists, they are also human beings, which means they are also biased as human beings. They've got their own bias that can affect you being selected. They've got their own subjective views that can make them not to like you, can make them not want to select you. So they've got their own biases that they deal with during the selection. So some of you are not selected, not because you can't be a good psychologist, not because you don't have the marks, not because you don't have the good personality. Maybe that day the person woke up on the wrong side of the bed. He's just negative. It doesn't matter how good you are going to be. The person is going to score you low. So sometimes it has nothing to do even with you being a good person or having the potential to be a psychologist or not. It's just the person on the other side. So you come to an interview, somebody thinks when they look at you, they listen to you, they feel you are not ready. It could be their subjective views. You are ready. That is why they might reject you here, the same year, the same month, another institute feel you are ready. So don't take it personal. I tell people, if you have got the percentages, the marks, and you want to be a psychologist, and you believe you can be a psychologist, don't take rejection personal. As long as you pursue and you believe it, it will happen. Don't think what the people have concluded on you that day is the end of you. Don't do that. It is your dream. It is your career. You know yourself. Whatever feedback that you get, don't take it personal. Greetings friends, this is Dr. T and thank you for joining me this day. In today's video, I wanted to speak to you about how to deal with rejection for either application for your honors in psychology or masters in psychology. And I believe that today's video can also benefit anybody who has been rejected for admission in any institute. But I want to focus particularly for those who have been rejected for honors in psychology and masters. I believe that this video will bring some form of closure to those who have been rejected, because most of the time when you are rejected, you don't even get any rejection letter or even an explanation. And I want to do this video in particular because I have been on the selection panel, and with my own experience of firstly being a student who went for the selection, I know the stress of that selection process and what it entails to be in that what we now call selection week, although it might take about 3 days in some instance. But I've also been on the other side where I have been part of the panel where we do selection. And I think that information on its own can give you some form of insight to help you with your closure in terms of your application. So I hope you'll enjoy, and this will be able to give you some form of motivation. Not only closure, but I plan to give you motivation if you still want to apply, that you can apply again. I hope that you never lose hope in psychology. I'm an advocate for psychology career, so I don't want you to give up in your dream of becoming a psychologist, because I believe that you will never regret being a psychologist. That is why I've done a video where I speak about why you should follow a career in psychology. Watch that video. I show you, I reveal about the shortage of psychologists in South Africa. That is why I don't want you to give up. Regardless of the challenges that you face, I don't want you to give up on your dream to become a psychologist. And There are very few psychologists in South Africa. So if you give up, you are actually reducing the number of psychologists that we could have had. So we really need you to add to the numbers. You must understand, if I ask you how many psychologists do you know in your area where you are, probably none. If you know any, they're not a lot. But every corner of where you stay, you are going to see a medical practice, a surgery, but you are unlikely to see any psychologist. That just shows you the shortage that is there in psychology, of psychologists rather. We always speak about the country having few doctors. So imagine if you can have so many psychologists around you, doctors around you rather, and we are telling you there is a shortage of medical practitioners in South Africa, how much more psychologists, which you can't even see in the communities, you can't even see in the rural areas. People have to travel long distance to see a psychologist. Even in the community clinics and hospitals, there are few that have got psychologists in them. Community centers, there are few that have got counselors in them. So you can just imagine the shortage that exists around the country, and you want to give up. You want to give up being a psychologist just because another institute told you that you can't make it, or they never shortlisted you. You just want to give up like that, give up your dream because somebody did not shortlist you. So I'm hoping with this video you will have some closure that will give you hope that it is still fine to go and try again. I don't want you to give up on your dream. So what I'm going to share today will help you understand that you have no reason to give up on your dream of becoming a psychologist. You must not give up on your dream of becoming a psychologist just because an institute did not shortlist you, or somebody lost your form, or another psychologist said you are not good enough. I can tell you, I'm another psychologist, and I'm telling you, you are good enough to be a psychologist. So if you still have that dream, I would say pursue it. Nothing can stand on your way of becoming a psychologist. So I hope you'll enjoy this video. Before I get into the gist of this topic, if you have not yet subscribed to the channel, I want to encourage you that make sure that you click on the subscribe button at the corner of this video. Click on the subscribe button and click on the bell as well, so that every time I post, you can get a notification. Click on the thumbs up button, like this video, because the more you like it, the more YouTube shares it with many people, and many people need to hear this message. This is the message of hope that I'm hoping that with this message, with this video, I'll be able to give you some motivation and encouragement. So let's get into the topic of today. Now, what I want to talk to you, firstly, I'm going to give you about 7 reasons why you might have been rejected on your application for honors in psychology or a master's in psychology. I want to do in 2 sections. The first one, I'm looking at some of the reasons that could have led you to being rejected, and the other section, the last section, I'm going to look at what are some of the mitigating factors, or what are some of the things that you can do to avoid rejection next time. I don't want this to be a long video, so if it becomes too long, I'm going to cut it and do 2-part series on how you can deal with rejection. But not only just coping with the fact that you've been rejected, but how to prepare that you avoid rejection next time when you apply. Now, firstly, the first reason why you might be rejected or not be admitted to psychology honors, it could be an administrative issue. And I'm going to break it into 2 parts. The first part is that when you apply, you must understand that it's an application is an administrative process. So it could happen that you apply, but they never get your application. I've seen people on Facebook, I've seen people saying, I've applied, but I've never got received any feedback. What could be the reason? The reason could be they never got your application. It's not there. It doesn't exist. So I wanted to say, firstly, before you even conclude that you have been rejected or that you have not been shortlisted, check if your application has been received. You see, when it comes to application for masters and honors, it's a very serious application. I will encourage you, don't leave your application to chance or to an administrator. I mean, especially if you're applying at UNISA, you must not leave your application to a box somewhere, or even if you're applying anywhere else. You can't leave your application for a master's and honors and rely and depend on the fact that you dropped it in a box. Make it your responsibility after applying. Call the administrator or go to the institute to check if they have received your application. Many things happen. I mean, imagine you leave your application in a box. Whoever collects them drops your application by mistake. Few months later, when people are going for interviews, you find out that you were not called. When you try to inquire, they tell you no, they never received your form. How do you deal with that? So take the responsibility. Make sure that your application is received by the right people. When you send it, you put it in a box, whatever. Make sure that after you do that, give them a call. If they're not picking to confirm it, make sure that you go there in person. And I will encourage that if you could, make sure that you request them to provide you with some form of written confirmation. Look, some administrators, they're not nice. They might not be kind to you when you ask them for that. What you can do, you just speak to them on the phone. When you finish, you write them an email. Thank you, so-and-so, for taking my call and confirming that you received my application. That's just a backup. In case anything happened, they tell you application is not there, you've got an email after you have spoken to them. You even mention them by name. When you speak them on the phone, what's your email? I just want to confirm, in case I have a follow-up question, just to send you an email. You send an email, you mention their name, just to confirm that they have received an application. The other thing about application is that you must understand that sometimes the application can be received, but they lose it in the process, because at the initial stage of the application, it's very administrative. You find not even the department is involved. It's just the admin. That is why they tell you submit the application through the admission process. An administrator can lose your application. Guys, I'm telling you this because I've been in higher education for a long time now. And the thing that happened behind the scenes, sometimes they will shock you. So I don't want you to leave your application for a master. This is your future. But somebody might not treat it in that way. Somebody might just be a job. Whether they feel like doing it or not doing it, it doesn't matter. But for you, it's a matter of your life and career. So you need to make sure that you get into that program. So ensure that they receive it. Somebody may lose your form, and when you call, they realize that they had it, but they can't find it. The best way to protect themselves, they'll tell you, no, you are not shortlisted. You are not shortlisted. So you need to make sure that you take responsibility. Make sure that they confirm that they have your form. There are other administrative things that you can't control, but in terms of them receiving your form, let them be able to confirm them to you. So it could be that. So you could be rejected not because you don't meet the minimum requirements. Nobody saw your form. Nobody saw your form. So imagine now you want to leave psychology and saying, oh, they didn't even shortlist you. Nobody saw your form. It never even reached the right people because it got lost somewhere. So make sure they get your form. That's number one. So people get rejected because their forms, they get lost in the administrative process. The second thing is that the first stage of selection is based on academic results, academic performance. It is purely a game of numbers. I did a video, I want you to check it out, where I speak about master selection tips. Check that, because I also highlighted some aspect of this. But you must understand that the first section of selection, the first phase of selection, is purely about numbers. In other words, an administrator sits down with your academic records and they calculate average. You know, sometimes you need to take matters further. When they say an average of honors or an average of whatever, you can even calculate it yourself on a page. Just, an A4 page, show them how you calculate it. If there's a complexity about your calculation, you can calculate it for them on a page neatly. Be very professional as a psychologist. Very neatly, you calculate it on a page, you print it and include it in the envelope. In that way, you remove any error, because sometimes you need to take extra measures so that you make life simple for an administrator. You don't want even calculations errors, particularly if you are meeting the requirements on an inch. Or there's a complexities about your application. You find you have done another module or whatever, marks needs to be considered. You can just write a brief, make your own calculation, edit there as a supplement, so that whoever gets it can be able to see how you think you have met the requirements. So make sure that you have met the requirements in terms of academic record. Meeting the requirements, most of the time they'll tell you to get to psychology honors they want 60, or to get to masters they want 65. I say to you, when they want 65, don't aim for 65 or 60. In psychology, psychology is a very nice course. I will say aim for a distinction where possible. There are certain modules that they are easy to do. Those modules go all out. There are modules that are easy to get a distinction. They are very straightforward. Go all out on those modules. So I don't want to mention them. In case I mention one that you don't think is straightforward, I'm not going to mention any module. But there are certain modules I will say you need to go all out. If there are modules that you think are very difficult, you can put it on the comment section here. I will be able to assist you with that. I will comment to that. I can even make a video. Share below which modules you feel that are not straightforward. Just put on the comment section as well, and I will address them, because psychology is a very nice course to study. So most modules you are going to enjoy them if you really like psychology. So those modules, go for distinctions. Go all out. Make sure that you get distinctions. So try to make sure that your average is way below 65. But don't get 65, 67, whatever. You can get that. You'll still be able to be considered. But I'm saying to be competitive, because remember, there are over 100 people who apply. Sometimes you can go to 1,000 of people who apply. So they're going to shortlist based on the marks that they see. So make sure that you have the marks. The marks are very important. The marks are important, so you must have them. Don't aim just for 65. Get very good marks. So sometimes you are rejected, you are not shortlisted, not because you are not a good student. Because you are a good student, you got 65. You are a good student, you got 60. You are a good student because you passed. Even if you don't have 65, you are still a good student because you passed. You have a degree in psychology. You have an honors in psychology. So you might not have those marks, but you can still be a good psychologist. Make sure that you pursue getting the marks. That's number one. And get high marks. That's number two. So sometimes it's not that you don't have the marks. It's just that they took from the top, high achievers, and you never made the cut. So if they're going down with the numbers and percentages, and then they get to a point where they take maybe let's say they want 12 people, 30 of you meet the requirements in terms of the marks, or 30 of you are in top 70. You'll find when they get to that top 30, now they might look into demographics now. demographics, because you don't just want a class where it's only one demographic group. You want a mixture. You want a mixture of demographics. Obviously, others are going to get more preference than the other. I think it's common. Psychology has been more a profession for whites more than blacks and Indians, so they will get more preference. And they're not getting preference just because of they are black or Indians, but it will still come down to the marks first. And then when you get to the marks and the marks are there, and then they can look at the demographic. So make sure that you increase your competitiveness. And also the issue of gender, they will play a role, but the marks must still be there, because you don't want a class with only females or a class with only males. We know in psychology there are few males compared to females, so obviously males are also going to be given some form of preference, but obviously the proportions are going to be there. So don't feel I'm going to be excluded because I'm a female, or I'm going to be added because I'm a male. You must have the marks, and then you must have other qualities which are important. So sometimes you are rejected mainly because you don't meet the minimum requirements, or sometimes you do meet the minimum requirement but the competition is too tight. And that is why you will see when we get to mitigating factors, I will mention how you can deal with that particular issue. So that's point number 2. Now, point number 3, it's also relating to issue of admission. It's on priorities. Sometimes when you apply, and this is not common in most institutes, you put first choice and second choice. Make sure you choose your choice very well, because sometimes it creates an administrative challenges. When you are applying for clinical psychology and counseling or educational, you've got 2 options. You find the form is in a department which is your second choice, instead of being where it's your first choice. So make sure that you choose well which one is your first choice, which one. And I think on that, I must just speak briefly on this, and I'm going to do a video where I speak about the different disciplines in psychology. There is some exaggeration in terms of the role of clinical psychologists compared to other psychologists. For some reason, I don't know, maybe some of you guys, you don't understand the disciplines. You think clinical are more superior than other professions. Some people, not you, maybe you are a wrong person. Your friend who's not here, who's not watching with you, pass the message. All psychologists, we are all equal. There's no better psychologist than the other. No one gets paid. That is why you must watch a video which I've done where I speak about the payment of a psychologist, where I speak about the salaries. You will see we are all the same. And even to compare that, it's very difficult, because you can even get others who get more than others, which you won't think that they get more paid than other people. Experience will count when it comes to salaries. But psychologists, we are all psychologists. We differ in terms of where we work or how we work. But majority of us, we share certain knowledge, and we might work in the same environment. I'm going to do a video where I distinguish the two. You find a clinical in a hospital. You can find educational in a hospital, working with children. You can find a counselor in a hospital. You find industrial in a hospital, working in the HR department. You find a research psychologist in a hospital, conducting medical research. So a hospital or a clinical setting is commonly for a clinical psychologist, but you might find all of us in a hospital. So we differ, but the difference is not that huge. In terms of the work that we do, the scope, that's where you can see major distinction. But I'm an educational psychologist. I specialize in psychological issues related to education, which means if you want educational psychologists, you'll assume that you'll find them a lot at school and varsities and TVETs. But you find most clinical psychologists and counselors in those areas. So the lines are a bit blurry. My point is that get knowledge about this field and the disciplines, so that you don't choose clinical where maybe the company, because all of you are going to clinical, and that's why all of you are getting rejected, and later you find out you never actually wanted clinical, you wanted something else, and you thought clinical is the thing. So I want to advise you, get information about the disciplines. I'm going to do a video on that, and before I do it, I want you to also put in the comment section, let me know what do you want to know about the different disciplines, so that you can be clear about them. Don't waste time. I mean, I was fortunate, I've never applied for any field besides educational, and I've really enjoyed being in that field, and I don't even regret having not considered any other field, because I initially applied for child psychology thinking that's what it is, until I was corrected that it's actually educational. But I never had a challenge, and maybe back then it was not as less challenging as it is now. But my point is that find out exactly what you want to do. Some of you just want to do research psychology. You should not be going through all the trouble that everybody goes through. Some of you want to be a counselor. You should not be going through all the trouble that other people are going through. Find out exactly what do you want to do. When you know that, it will guide you on the discipline that you must apply for. And I'm telling you, the minute you figure out what you want to do and the discipline, you go for it. Nothing can hinder you from becoming what you want to be. So the second thing is that the third thing is about the issue of choice. Make sure that you put your first choice clearly. If it's clinical, put clinical, educational, research. Be very clear so that your form goes to the right department. Because at university, you find clinical department is there, educational is that side, counseling is, UP for example. Clinical is in one campus, educational psychology is in another campus. So if you don't apply correctly, you find your form is in wrong places because you've got a wrong choice and you did not follow the process. So make sure that you put the correct option when you apply, and prioritize the one that you really, really want to do as your first option. The number 3, the other reason why you might be rejected could be poor application. This one, people, you just need to sort this one. Poor application. I've seen applications that they leave much to be desired. You see, when you apply for psychology, it requires a lot of narrative. They're going to ask you to describe yourself, tell us why you want to apply for this course, tell us why you think you'll be the best fit for the course, give us information about your voluntary work. They can ask you a lot of things. Let me tell you, there's nothing as bad as trying to read an application for a psychologist is full of grammatical errors. I'm telling you, you are making your life difficult. Some of you are rejected, you are not shortlisted, not because you don't have the marks, but when you look at the way you wrote on your form, we can't even take you serious as a student because you don't take yourself serious yourself. You submit a form that has got a lot of errors. You can see that you have not read it. Now think about it as now a psychologist. By the time your form now comes now, the second phase now of the selection, when it moves from the admin, it goes to the department. In the department now, that's where we check the contents now. By the time it comes to me, and I'm looking at you to say, this person will be submitting assignments already. If it's like this, why do I want to trouble myself? Because in psychology, honors and masters, we don't teach you now how to write properly. We don't teach you how to format your documents. We don't teach you how to put a full stop. When you get there, we assume you have dealt with the writing skills at an undergraduate level. So I want to recommend that when you fill your form, make sure that you check your language thoroughly. The best way to do that is that type out your answers first. Nowadays, the Microsoft PDF, they allow you to edit into the PDF, which means you can type and copy what you typed and put it on the PDF. Now when you type, it will help you with checking errors, spell check, and I recommend actually there's a program or a software called Grammarly. Grammarly is a very good, particularly even if you are going to do your masters, even if you are going to do your honors, for your assignments, for writing your dissertation, your thesis, is very good. I recommend that you get Grammarly. I think there's a free program about it where it checks your grammar, where it checks your spelling. Grammarly will be focusing on both the spelling and grammar. I'll leave the link below this video on Grammarly. Click on that link, go to Grammarly and check. You can take a free option. Later when you want it, you can take the premium one. I can't remember how much you pay. The other option is to check your institute if they've got license to Grammarly. So you put your documents, you type whatever that you need to type on and check it on Grammarly. When you are done, you put it on Wait. Sometimes when you've got the premium, you can actually install Grammarly on as an add-on function on Wait, and Grammarly will edit your document. When you are done editing, then you can paste it on the form. Make sure that your form looks professional in terms of how you wrote it, because those things, they really play a role. Make sure your form, some of you are rejected not because you don't have the marks. The marks are there, but your writing, your form, just, you are scratching on the form. If you have made a mistake, be neat. Show that, psychology is very administrative. We fill forms, we administer tests, we write. So if you are proving to us before you even start that you are not a clean person, you are not an organized person, you are not, you are not administrative, you are going to have an issue in psychology. So make sure that that form is free of error. Sometimes it's very difficult to remove any error, but show that you have made an effort to check your language. If it's handwritten, make sure your handwriting is neatly. Yeah. Make sure we can read what you write. So yeah, if you can write, type and paste on the document. But if you can't, if your handwriting is tricky, get help, because somebody must read what you write. So those are the things that can lead you to rejection. So you think you are not a good person to be a psychologist. You are, but the way you go about it, you make it difficult to be selected. So the other thing, make sure that you check the issue of errors. And the number 4 is the issue of lack of genuinity, originalness, authenticity. Some of you, I think, when you go to and I'm talking now, when now you have went through the shortlisting, you have been called for interviews or selection process. Some of you are not original. You are copycats. You go there, you copy what other people are doing. In the video that I've done, which I've referred to, where I speak about the selection tips, I talk about how in psychology, they want a heterogeneous mixture of people. They want people who can be different so that they can add to each other. That difference is what increases the depth of the training program. So if you go to selection, you see what other people do, you want to look like them, you are going to be rejected, both of you. Or the other person might be rejected, might be taken, you remain. Or you remain, they're rejected. Because you can't have two people who are similar in a class. we are highly. Look around. People who do masters will tell you, we look different. I don't know how they do it, but we look different. I think it becomes automatic. We don't sit before the selection and say we want to select, but it just automatically, we don't want people who are similar. We need different, characters in the class, because that gives you a picture of the kind of people you are going to be working with. So make sure you don't become a copycat. Become original. Be authentic. Be authentic. Be you. You rather be rejected for being yourself than being rejected for trying to be somebody. Don't want to look like a psychologist. Be yourself. Be authentic. However, I must put a caveat there. in being yourself, you also need to make sure that you don't just reveal concerning or emotional issues that can sort of elicit emotional response from you. You know that there are certain areas in your life that are very sensitive. You might end up crying. We are psychologists when we are in a session, when you are at your interviews, but we are not there to provide you a therapeutic session. We are there to conduct a selection. So if you are going to go there and start crying, imagine, we want to select, you are crying because you started to talk about emotional things. Now, that on its own can play against you. You know, there are, and I'm not saying if you cry automatically you are not selected. You must understand there's a context. There are certain times when you are talking and a question is posed on you. Maybe you are speaking about the death of the loved one, and it become emotional because you were put at the corner, you were asked that question, and as you are sharing, you know, you start to become emotional. It's a different story. But I'm saying, where possible, and you are able to control it, and you know issues that can elicit emotional response from you, avoid them. Avoid them, because you don't want anything that will distract the selection process. Sometimes showing emotions or being too emotional in a selection process can make people to judge you wrongly, can perceive you as somebody who's not able to deal with the emotions, or they can perceive you as somebody who still have a lot of emotional baggage that they have to deal with, or that you might not be able to cope because you still have issues. So be careful, because remember, psychologists are judgment of character. What we do as psychologists, you know, some people say we read brain. Psychologists are not, we don't read people's brain. No. We understand and we study human behavior. Our interest is human behavior. So we study human behavior. We look at you, we looked at how you behave. We study human behavior. So when you are sitting there, you behave in a particular way. That behavior, that is what we study. We make conclusions about, we make inference about it. So make sure that you don't give us or portray a behavior that can be easily judged wrongly, because I mean, you started to speak about things that you were not supposed to speak about. Don't overindulge us unnecessary. Stick to what has been requested of you. So make sure that you become authentic. Don't copy somebody. Be yourself, and avoid, you know, very sensitive topic that might make you become emotional. That can become a red flag that you might not cope with your studies. Already psychology is demanding psychologically, intellectually. So if already we feel you have got emotional issues to deal with, it will be better for us to help you by not putting you into more stress, by not selecting you. So be careful with just being, you know, too overindulging in your approach. So that's the other reason why some of you might go for first day, second day they don't call you, because maybe you were too emotional in the first day, or you started to reveal things you're not supposed to reveal. So make sure that stay away from things that are too sensitive, that might make people want to judge you or make conclusions on. Remember, when we are sitting there, we are all psychologists. I don't think in the selection process, by the time you come, I think we are all psychologists in the room. So we make judgment of human behavior. So be careful. I don't think there's anybody who attend selection who's not. At least in my experience, we're all psychologists. So you'll find you've got maybe 3 psychologists in the room. You might have 3 sessions. You have, in one room you've got 3 psychologists, in another 4 psychologists, in another 3 psychologists, whatever the format is. But you find all of them, they're psychologists. So can you just imagine, you know, psychologists judging you or making conclusions about your behavior just because you went to a topic that you should not go to? So be careful. And this relates to the next topic, or the next reason why you might be rejected. You might be rejected also, and this one is particularly relevant for people who do an honors in an institute and they apply for masters in the same institute. One of the reasons you might be rejected is if you've got a bad reputation. at an honors level. Let me tell you about that. If you have got a bad reputation at an honors level, definitely that might have a negative effect on you. You must understand that although we are psychologists and we are trained in human behavior, at the bottom of everything, at the core of everything, we are human beings. In other words, if you are a student at an honors level and you had a very bad behavior, or you had just a bad vibe or bad energy, you were just a headache to work with, I can assure you, you are unlikely to get to masters in that particular institute. That I can assure you. You are unlikely to get to masters. They will, they will package you. They will package you nicely that you never come back. Not because you can't be a psychologist. It's just that you are, maybe just, for lack of better word, you are a troublemaker. So the minute you are a headache for an institute at an honors level and you want to go, they can select you somewhere, but in that institute, chances are very slim that they will allow you to come back. They will, even you will see, they will come up with the reasons that don't make sense. Reasons that you feel they should ignore, but they will come up with them because you are a troublemaker. So I will advise you, be strategic, especially when you are an honor student and you want to come back to the same institute. Be strategic. Always remember that you are a student in a journey. When you are in a master's, it doesn't matter. You can cause all the nonsense. You are leaving either way. You are not coming back. And you must make sure you are not coming back for PhD. But even if you come back for a PhD, you are coming back for one person, just your supervisor. But at honors, be careful. At masters, yeah, you can do whatever. At honors, be careful. Don't be too much a troublemaker necessary. Don't be a problem. Don't bring bad vibe in the class. Don't bring bad vibe in the institute. We are very small, and negativity can be experienced very quickly when you are a very negative person. I remember when I was doing my master's, and psychologists have got too much energy. And I remember meeting this gentleman, he's a professor, and I was doing my master's and I was too energetic about my topic and how I want to, make an impact. The man said to me, your thinking is good, but don't forget that you are a student and you must meet the requirements and leave. That advice opened my eyes that, sometimes it's not about trying to change the world or to change your surrounding at that point. Think strategically about what is the main goal. Main goal. I started to change because I realized the most important aspect, especially when I'm doing masters, you have got 3 years to complete your dissertation, to complete your internship, and to be able to write the board exam. So if you are not strategic, you end up having to do extended program because you're not strategic. You are trying to change the world. Similarly with an honors and getting to masters. When you are a student at honors, be strategic. You still need to get to masters. You still want them to select you. Be strategic how you relate with them. Be a useful person. Don't be there, just be a troublemaker. Be a useful person. Make it difficult for them to want to let you go. Some of you, you are rejected, even though you are their student, and you wonder, why did they reject you when you are their student? Why are they happy to let you go? Because you have not given them a reason to keep you. You have not. Actually, some of you, you give them reason why they should reject you. You give them reason why they should reject you. When they want a group leader for assignments, you are not available. If you become a group leader, that assignment will be late submitted, or everybody will be fighting each other just because you are a group leader. That's a bad vibe that you are bringing into the class. You are fighting everybody. You are fighting the lecturers. Let me tell you, an institute is made of different personalities. And psychologists, psychologists sometimes, they have their own issues. They have their own issues. So when you add to those issues, they can also misjudge you. They misjudge you. They misjudge your confidence as arrogance. They misjudge your organizational skills as being a perfectionist. So you come to institute or department that are not organized, and you are an organized person by nature. There's nothing wrong in bringing an organization or administrative skill into that department, but how you do it will determine whether you bring a bad vibe or you become an asset. I've seen people, they are perfectionists, and the psychology department, you find they are not. Study guides are not in order, they don't come on time, and they make a lot of noise, like they'll even irritate you as students that this thing is worrying you, but the way it's worrying that other person who's your fellow student, it's like as if you're not worried by the same thing. Those people, they end up being marked and noted. I'm telling you, some of you get packaged. Yeah, you don't even get shortlisted. Imagine you are their student, they don't even shortlist you. Something is not right. I can assure you, if you are a student in an institute and you are a high achiever, I've seen people with distinction not being shortlisted. Yeah, they package you nicely. They are happy to let you go. They'll be happy not to see you again. Be careful. So they can take you somewhere, so you are rejected, not because you are a bad student, but just because you and that institute do not click. I will say apply somewhere if you have that experience. It's not that you can't be a psychologist, but maybe you can't be in that particular institute. So as a student, you need to be strategic so that you make it difficult for them not to select you. This video is taking long, so I'm going to do the second part on a different video about how to avoid all these particular issues. Now, the other reason why you might have been rejected, it could be lack of professionalism and lack of, when I say professionalism, I'm speaking about professional development and also personal development. These two concepts are very, very important in psychology. They are very important. When I speak about professional development, I'm speaking about you. I spoke about the application, the way you conduct yourself in terms of the profession. Are you an ethical person? When you are in honors, they can even judge that. Are you an ethical person? The way you speak about ethical issues, do you sound like somebody who's professional, who will do well within the profession? So check your language, how you communicate. Professional development has to do with the professional communication or language, how you write your things, how you organize yourself. Professional development also has to do with your knowledge of the discipline. I've seen people who come to honors selection or a master's selection. You find you are coming to an honors selection. You don't even know what psychology does. You are busy telling us that we read brains. Yeah, you read my brain. Don't do that, especially at an honors level. So know about psychology, understand what psychology do, know about HPCSA, be able to distinguish us from these other organizations, understand our profession, show that you understand what is psychology all about, know about counseling psychology, a registered counselor, the difference between the two. Know about that. You can't just go to psychology and you want to, be admitted in a profession that you don't even understand. Just one question, you find it knocks you out. One question, they see that this person doesn't even know what he wants to study. Why did he even apply? So the question they ask you can knock you out. In an interview, they ask you, but why didn't you apply to be a registered counselor? Why didn't you follow that route instead of being a psychologist? You find your answer revealed to them that you don't even know the difference. So you don't know the discipline. Or somebody apply for a master's, they apply for educational. They ask, why didn't you go for clinical? They can hear the way you are thinking that will have done well in clinical, they ask you, why didn't you go for clinical? Your reasoning shows them that you don't even know the distinction between the two disciplines. Why didn't you go for counseling? Your distinction, your explanation shows you don't know the difference. Why didn't you go for industrial? So you need to understand the difference between the disciplines. I don't have time. I'm going to do another video where I speak about the different disciplines. You can put in the comment section what you want to know. At this point in psychology, the distinction is not that big, particularly because we no longer have the different scope of practice. Back then, we used to have a different scope of practice. Now we've got one scope called the scope of profession. So, but you still need to know the distinction. How are we different in terms of training? How are we different in terms of the training? So if you want, you can also refer to the previous scope of practice, because it will help you just to formulate your understanding or conceptualize how the different disciplines. So understand the field, that's professional development, how you conduct yourself, and also personal development. Personal development is about, personal development looks at your communication skill, your analytical skill, your reflective skill, your being able to work within a team. Some of you, when you get to the interview group activities, you just enter a room, the instructor is still telling you, the psychologist is saying there's a table there are different pieces. Before they even finish what they want to say, you're already on the table trying to play with pieces. You're not a psychologist. You must think first. Be a person who really think. Be analytical. Be attentive to details. Don't just engage in things. You are going to play, try to do whatever. They're still giving you instruction. You have already jumped. You are playing with the pieces, trying to build, because you have had your friend outside telling you, you are going to build this. They are still giving you. You have already started. What if the instruction change? So be attentive as a psychologist, because when you go through the selection process, it's not even about what you are doing, because sometimes they can tell you build whatever, and the pieces they give you are not going to be, are not going to help you to complete whatever model that they want you to do. So it's not even about what you are doing. They just want to see how you work as a team. You have already jumped, you are a perfectionist, you are trying to build and things are not coming together. You are getting frustrated. They want to see how you work as a team. So your team work skills are very important. So when you are in a setting like that, you find, you don't show the skills that you'll be able to work within a team. That is why I speak about don't compete with others. When you are in a group activity, make sure that you really show that you are a team player, because the conclusion of it is that you are going to be asked, you might be, maybe others they do differently, but you might be asked to reflect. A psychologist is a very reflecting person. You are always looking back at what you have done and how you can use that to improve what you do as a professional. So make sure that you don't just touch things and build. Think about what you are doing. If you're in a group setting, you are quiet or you are observing, be thoughtful of that, the fact that you are silent. If you are ignoring somebody, be aware that you are ignoring that particular person. Because when you reflect, they might ask you, were you aware that so-and-so was ignored? And call people by name. That is why they've got the name tag here. Call them by name. The name tag are mainly for them. But you can also be smart. It's a communication skill, interpersonal skill, to show that people have got name. I can speak to them via the name that I have in front of them. So you call them by name. Johnny, why are you holding that piece? Can I use that? I want to put it somewhere. When somebody puts something and you agree with them, no, you are right. Put it, leave it there. Don't stop. Not to them. So if sign language is allowed, so make sure that if communication is not prevented, you communicate to people. You show that you are a team player. If verbal communication is not wanted, make sure you use non-verbal communication. You give people a thumbs up, Shaisa, whatever. Be yourself. Don't get them. No, psychologist Shaisa. Oh, Lord have mercy. Okay, the last one. Why you might have been rejected. Okay, so the one that I just dealt with, professional and personal development. Make sure that throughout your psychology career, I'm going to speak about it actually when I do the next section. Professional development and psychological and personal development, they are very important. Some of you are rejected in the first round due to these particular issues. You lack professional development. You lack personal development. When we look at you, remember we're psychologists, we feel like you are still too young. Not by age, but professionally, you still need to develop. Or personally, you need to develop, you know. So we make a judgment on that, and you find you're not selected because of that. We feel, you know what, you can go and, you know, do some reflection and develop, and maybe you'll come back better. The last one is that, and this is the most important thing, if you missed everything I said, don't miss this one. Psychology selection, it is conducted mainly by psychologists. And besides being psychologists, they are also human beings. Which means they are also biased as human beings. They've got their own bias that can affect you being selected. They've got their own subjective views that can make them not to like you, can make them not want to select you. So they've got their own biases that they deal with during the selection. So some of you are not selected, not because you can't be a good psychologist, not because you don't have the marks, not because you don't have the good personality. It's just that me, when I was on the other side, observing you, we didn't connect. I didn't think you're the perfect person to take a space for somebody. I liked other people more than you. It could purely be that. So sometimes that is why I encourage you that don't let lack of selection into a master's or honors program determine that whether you can be or not be a psychologist. You might be rejected today, but you find you might be accepted the following year. And interesting enough, you might be selected by the same people who rejected you previously. So I want to encourage you that don't give up. Just because you are not selected this year doesn't mean you can never be a psychologist at all. It could be that this year didn't work, or this year they had people who just decided that you are not the best for them, but next year there will be a different selection panel. In the same institute, the selection panel might still change. Maybe some people might be the same, but other people might be different. And you might relate well with other new people who are coming. So you never know. Don't just say they rejected me last day in that institute, I'll never apply. Understand that the people who are selecting you, besides being psychologists, they are also human beings. They've got their own subjective views. They've got their own biases. They've got their own, issues. Maybe that day the person woke up on the wrong side of the bed. He's just negative. It doesn't matter how good you are going to be. The person is going to score you low. So sometimes it has nothing to do even with you being a good person or having the potential to be a psychologist or not. It's just the person on the other side. So be careful that your career, your dream get crushed by somebody who was who just woke up on the wrong side of the bed, or just because of their subjective views. So some of you are not rejected mainly due to some of this reason. So you come to an interview, somebody thinks when they look at you, they listen to you, they feel you are not ready. It could be their subjective views. You are ready. That is why they might reject you here, the same year, the same month, another institute feel you are ready. So don't take it personal. I tell people, if you have got the percentages, the marks, and you want to be a psychologist, and you believe you can be a psychologist, don't take rejection personal. There are 100 people, few psychologists making judgment on them. Don't take it personal. As long as you pursue and you believe it, it will happen. Don't think what the people have concluded on you that day is the end of you. Don't do that. It is your dream. It is your career. You know yourself. Whatever feedback that you get, don't take it personal. There are many people you are competing with at that time. There are many things on the menu. It's like, when you go to a restaurant, you've got too many options. The fact that you didn't select steak doesn't mean steak is a bad steak. It just means you didn't prefer it that day. So that's what happened with psychologists. Maybe the day you went for interview, somebody or the panel did not prefer you, but you are still the best. You can still become a psychologist. Let me end there and encourage you. If you have not subscribed, I want to encourage you that you subscribed to this channel. Make sure that you click on the subscribe button at the bottom of this page. Click the bell as well, so that every time I post any video, you can get a notification, and share this video with as many people as possible. Enjoy the rest of the day. I hope this video has helped you, and I encourage you that don't give up on your dream. Continue living your life to the fullest. Enjoy.